Hello everyone, and welcome to the January 2012 edition of VolunteerMatch Solutions Best Practice Network webinar series. I'm Casey Brennan from VolunteerMatch and will be moderating our session today. We're extremely excited today to feature Vicky Hush, our Vice President of Client Services and Strategic Partnerships, who brings the wealth of knowledge about volunteer engagement from her 5.5 years with VolunteerMatch working with our corporate partners. Throughout her time at VolunteerMatch, Vicky has not only helped counsel clients about how to establish their volunteer engagement programs, but also how to adapt and evolve those efforts over time. So today she'll share with us some insight about the volunteer engagement change model that VolunteerMatch has created to help aid clients in this ongoing process of evaluation and improvement. In addition, we'd like to welcome two of our corporate partners to the session today who will be sharing their organization's experiences building and maintaining flexible volunteer engagement programs. Sue Austin joins us from United Health Group, where she serves as the Director of the Office of Social Responsibility and oversees the company's employee volunteer program. We're also thrilled to welcome Aaron Dietrich from Discovery Communications, who oversees Discovery Impact, the organization's global CSR program. We'll hear a little bit more about each of their programs later in the session today. So before we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone on the line that you can submit questions for Vicky, Sue, and Aaron throughout the session today by typing in the chat box on the right side of your screen. You can also submit questions via Twitter by including the hashtag BPNFlexEVP, which you'll see on your screen, and include that to @VM_solutions. We will address as many questions as you can at the end of the session today. And then another reminder is that we'll also be sending a recording of the presentation to everyone following the event. So without further delay, I'm going to pass the session over to Vicky to kick us off.
Great, thank you, Casey. So I wanted to just welcome everyone to today's webinar. I know that there are quite a few folks on the line that are corporate social responsibility professionals and also community engagement professionals from across the country. So thank you for joining us. We're really looking forward to sharing how you can build a flexible and sustainable program. I'm just going to kick things off and sort of set the stage, and then we'll be able to dig into the VolunteerMatch change model that we've created that helps you to assess and adapt and evolve your own programs. So first off, what's this all about? Sort of the 30,000-foot view. Literally, this is a photo taken from one of our colleagues flying over the Himalayas in Nepal last year. But why are we all here? We know that time is an important part of your giving strategy, so giving time and not just giving money, and that along with that often comes more of a commitment than simply encouraging your employees to go to a website and click a donation link and enter their credit card or set up a payroll deduction. So getting them out and volunteering and engaging with their community at sort of a more wholesome and holistic level is more complex and adds complexity to the programs that you're running. It's about creating relationships with nonprofits on the ground, and it's about developing skills potentially of your employees, skills that they already have and that you'd like them to build upon, and skills that you'd like them to be introduced to. So it really is an opportunity to ignite a certain type of change in your communities, and again adds a layer of complexity for all of you that are managing these programs. So it sort of leads to the question, why even bother? We all know instinctively why volunteering and getting involved in your community is important. There are tons of statistics and research out there that support that. Statistics that you're looking at right now sort of give a high level of what consumers think of companies who engage in their communities, how that engagement in communities actually impacts the health of your employees and your volunteers, the role that volunteerism plays at a corporation, and how it can go beyond simply doing something that feels right for your employees, but also helps with retention and attracting the types of employees that you're really interested in. So I've just put on the screen a couple of different statistics out there because there's tons of them out there. We all know that volunteering is important and a critical component of your employee engagement program. And the reality is that all of us on the call are already drinking the Kool-Aid. So we don't need to see all of these statistics. I mean, I had to laugh when I was putting this together because I hadn't actually dug around and found the logo for the Kool-Aid man in quite a while. So it was fun to find him. But all of us have already accepted the importance of employee engagement and volunteering in the community. So what's next? And what should we be looking for in 2012? It's still January, just barely, January 2012. We're on the last day of it, so it's still an opportunity to create sort of a New Year's resolution for your program. And the reality is that you should actually be taking a look at your program, not just annually for that New Year's resolution, and certainly not in a way where come 2013 you realize that you forgot to do that resolution that you set out for. But really, you should be taking a look at your program daily and monthly and whatever it is that makes sense for your company culture, and make sure that the changes that are surrounding you with your business and with your culture, company culture again, and even in your department are reflected in your program. So it's really key to not just look ahead for an entire year, but really be paying attention to the things that are happening around you so that your program reflects correctly the culture that your employees are working in, and ensuring that your programs are engaging them in a way that makes sense. So with that, we wanted to just launch a quick poll and see what it is that everyone on the call would like to focus on in 2012. Let's see. So I'll launch this and give you just a couple of seconds to fill in which volunteer program elements that you would like to focus on in 2012. Is it measurement, communication, employee recognition, partnerships, or training? We've got just about half the folks on the call who have answered the poll, so we'll give you another 5 seconds or so. But really think about already what you've been hoping to revisit this year and potentially change for the coming year. Great. So we'll go ahead and close the poll and then take a look at it for everyone. So it looks like it's the communications and partnerships that are the ones that folks are really interested in focusing on, and then sort of right behind is measurement, and then pretty well tied almost is the recognition and training. So this is wonderful. It's an example of how everyone on the call is already thinking through what's important for 2012, and really getting to the crux of it, which is that you want to be keeping things fresh this year. So if there are 4 words that you leave this webinar with, I would hope that they would be these 4 that are on your screen right now. It's really important to be constantly taking a look at your programs, and again, as I mentioned before, paying attention to what's going on around you in the marketplace, in the economy, in the broader economy, and even in your competitive landscape, to make sure that your program is reflecting all around you. I like to give the example that if you can imagine a car company, so let's take Ford or GM or Honda, if you can imagine that they had a really successful 2011 with some of their new cars that came out and were on the lots. And so they decided that they were simply going to have those same cars year after year because they were successful one year. It just wouldn't happen. You know that their research and development departments and their design departments and their technology is constantly changing. They're constantly looking at what their competitors are doing. They're constantly paying attention to the global economy and what's going on around them, and they're innovating all of their products, just as your companies are innovating your core products and your core business. So it's key to be paying attention to those innovations and reflecting them in your employee engagement programs as well. It's no longer really an option to just sort of keep things status quo, where you've got a successful program and it worked out well 2 years ago and employees seem to like it, so we're just going to keep things as they are. It doesn't make sense in sort of the world that we live in today. So you want to make sure that you're acknowledging what's happening around you and evolving your program. So really driving home that it's important to assess, adapt, evolve, and repeat over and over again so that your programs reflect those changes around you. So with that, how do you evolve your program? VolunteerMatch, we've been lucky enough to work with hundreds of different corporate programs and gotten a sense of where folks often start and where they evolve to. What we see time and time again is that companies that are at the beginning stages of their programs are really focused on having a program that allows for choice in employee engagement. So maybe they're allowing employees to give or volunteer at a variety of nonprofits. They really want them to get their feet wet in employee engagement, and they want it to be very easy to access those types of opportunities and tools. And then as you sort of move up the spectrum, companies will sort of focus and align their programs a bit more so that they're really aligned with their business. So a healthcare company will be working and partnering with health NGOs or nonprofits. And maybe a utility company is focused on the environment because it's something that simply makes sense for what they're doing every day. They're out in the environment, they're out in their community. So they're not necessarily working on a different cause area, they're really aligning things with their business. And then finally, sort of the companies that are really leading the pack are very open and evolving, and they're the ones that are really assessing, adapting, and evolving and paying attention to what's happening beyond just their employee engagement program, but really focusing in on what makes sense for their employees and their company culture. So at VolunteerMatch, we've taken those sort of 3 phases and built a change model with the 5 levels that you see on the screen now. Sort of moving from the ad hoc level all the way to the optimized. And we'll take a look at that in a moment, but it really gives you a sense of how you can assess where your program is today and how you can move it kind of up or down the scale depending on what makes sense for your company. Now, when I was building these slides, I wasn't sure if I wanted just a sort of flower image, so I also put the option of creating red wine, since we're right below Napa and Sonoma County here in San Francisco. And this was also just kind of a nice image. It provides those kind of steps that are happening. And it also, if you think through wine sort of matures and has different complexities and is sort of constantly evolving. So that is one other kind of image to think through as you're thinking about your program. So the VolunteerMatch change model, let's take a look at what that actually means. We have a team here who developed this change model, and I'll just put up each of the 5 different levels so you can get a sense of what they are. But basically, it's these 5 levels. You have ad hoc, which is sort of your basic, informal, and kind of organic stage where maybe you are if you're just in the beginning stages of your program. Then it moves to managed, defined and proactive, rooted, and optimized. And there's a brief description that you can take a look at here. But really what's happening is you're sort of going from that very open, organic, new, full of choice level all the way to something where you're really paying attention to what's happening around you and evolving your program constantly so that it's continuing to grow. And then similarly, what we've done is broken things out into 9 different components. So the 9 components at the bottom of your screen are those elements that we see programs with success are all sort of paying attention to. So what we do is we sort of assess each component and place it and plot it along one of the levels. So you, at the end of the day, have a sense of, really where is my program and where are each of my different components. So let's take a look at what that really means if we did the analysis. So you may have a program where there's things kind of placed across all the different levels. Your organization and training, your program branding, and your skilled volunteering, maybe they're at the ad hoc level. Maybe that makes sense for where your program is and what's important to your company culture today. And then you can see that you've also got different components sort of seated along the spectrum. And then once you have a sense of where you are today and really dig into where you want to be going, it may be that for the skilled volunteering component, you'd really like to see yourself at the defined and proactive, and that makes a lot of sense because skilled volunteering is important to your company. You see the value in pushing your employees to use those skills and learn new skills, so you're really going to focus in on that component. Similarly, you may have It may be communications that you want to shift along the spectrum. But the key here is that it's unique to your company. So you may not be a company that it makes sense to have all of the components at the optimized level. You know, it may just not fit into the culture of the company where you work. There may not be enough resources to push things that way, and you may have a very successful program right in the middle of the spectrum or even in the managed area. So the VolunteerMatch program change model really gives you an opportunity to assess where your program is and then adapt where you would like it to be, and then constantly check back on it and evolve the various components and what's important for your program. So with that, I know we went through quite a bit. I think it would be helpful to hear how this works on the ground. So I'm thrilled to introduce Sue Austin, who you heard about from Casey. And Sue's just going to sort of walk through how United Health Group has ensured that their program is constantly evolving. Sue, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Thanks, Vicki. This is Sue Austin, and I've been with our Office of Social Responsibility since it was formed in 2006. We've been very focused at United Health Group on transforming our volunteer program into a strategically aligned effort that's integrated into the business of the company and into the fabric of the culture. But before I get more into that, let me tell you something about us. On the next slide, you'll see that we are a large healthcare organization headquartered in the Midwest, over 80,000 employees. We operate in all 50 states and international. In the U.S., we have hundreds of locations. I believe it's over 400. What's most descriptive about our culture is that we are very performance-driven. Social responsibility at United Health Group includes philanthropy, volunteering, and socially responsible business products such as our diabetes health plan. Because we're a healthcare company, we don't view SR as something we do in addition to our work. The very nature of our work is socially responsible. So using SR as a lens through which we engage our employees was a natural next step on our strategic journey. Once our office formed in 2006, we simplified our mission statement to helping people live healthier lives. And we also added SR as one of our 5 corporate values. And to Vicki's point about adapting, a couple of years ago we revisited the core values and restated them so they'd sound less like program names and more like desired behaviors. So compassion and relationships are the values we promote as being about SR. So we communicate quite a bit, pretty heavily, to stir employees to get involved by living the mission and the values. It was also our desire to embrace a cause where we could have impact and measure our results. For the first few years, the broad areas of health and education were the focus. We eventually went through an RFP process to find the right consultant to work with, and now we have a strategic direction that aligns with our mission. It's helping people live healthier lives by reducing chronic disease through prevention and care. Our other 2 focus areas are health, that's everything that isn't chronic disease related, and community, which pretty much covers everything else around meeting people's basic needs. On the next slide, I'll talk about our efforts to create a volunteer portfolio. We've worked hard to create accountability within the organization. So for example, we developed a quarterly dashboard that we measure our SR progress against. Similar to managing other parts of our business, we created the portfolio approach, and it applies to both our volunteering and giving. For volunteering, what we're trying to do is bring a more targeted focus to volunteering and shift more volunteering to our strategic direction. I mean, we all know there's no shortage of worthy causes, so the approach is designed to guide leaders and our volunteer councils as they make choices about organizing volunteer initiatives. It brings together the 3 SR focus areas which balance and complement each other to get the best results. The distinct advantages to this approach are, first, it maximizes impact and outcomes. It focuses our skills and energy on causes and organizations that align with our purpose. Second, it gives clear direction to our volunteer councils as they pursue and plan events. And third, it enables effective portfolio management as planners and decision makers make choices about community involvement. On the next slide, you'll get a closer look at the portfolio targets we've established. Something interesting to note is that before we started identifying health as a focus area, we found that 77% of our charitable giving was related to health, but we didn't know what percentage of our company-sponsored volunteering supported health. The table shows for each area of focus where we were in 2009, that's the baseline year for establishing the portfolio, as well as what we accomplished in 2011 and our target for 2012. The goal ranges are flexible enough to allow volunteer councils to exercise judgment and respond to unique opportunities. Because we understand that achieving the goals takes time, the 3-year timeline allows for change to be implemented at different rates as needed. We also recognize that responsibly transitioning out of existing volunteer commitments may take a period of up to several years. The results are measured based on hours tracked by employees in company-sponsored events on our VolunteerMatch system. We added a custom question to the system so employees can report on which focus area their volunteer activity supported. Our employees do a lot of personal volunteering, and personal volunteer hours aren't included in the portfolio measurement. As you can see, most of our volunteering hours are and probably will continue to be in general community activities. To implement the portfolio, our volunteer councils are engaged in short-term and ongoing activities. They need to consider their current annual calendar of events to determine the extent to which they need to shift away from some community activities and toward creating a more strategic portfolio. What some of our groups have done is to create an Excel spreadsheet that captures the 3 focus areas. As they do their annual planning, they enter each volunteer event into the spreadsheet under the correct focus area, and they can calculate the percentages to see how they're doing overall and make adjustments as needed. Our office rolls up the volunteer hours each quarter and shares the aggregate results. On the next slide, you'll see an example of how we assist the planning process with tools and resources. Our BAR tool helps planners make the most of their volunteer portfolio and raise the bar, so to speak, on their performance. So B is for balance, which means offering a mix of opportunities and including a focus on skills-based volunteering, as well as programs that have both short and long-term impact. A is for aligning activities that relate to our SR commitment and health mission. R is for results, emphasizing social impact, such as pints of blood donated versus number of volunteers. The lower part of the slide shows an example of strategic portfolio planning for a monthly calendar. We also provide resources such as tip sheets that give suggestions about volunteering activities to consider that align with the different focus areas. We also have relationships with national partners such as the Y that are also leveraged for the strategic planning of activities. The next slide shows examples of our impact and progress made on the strategic side. You've already seen how we're doing against the portfolio targets. This slide shows just how far we've come overall. So for example, up 11 percentage points in employee engagement since 2008, and substantial increases in our volunteerism rate and in the percentage of employees who volunteer through the company. And really off the charts on our VolunteerMatch stats, as you can see from the benchmark chart, our experience was about the same as other VolunteerMatch clients. If you look at the volunteer rate per 1,000 employees, in 2008 it was about the same, and then it really began to soar. So United Health Group is the solid line on that chart, and the VolunteerMatch client companies are the dash line. Since 2008, we've gone from 12 to 149 active volunteer councils across our organization. These groups deserve a lot of the credit for motivating employees and for getting on board with our programs and initiatives. We're constantly looking for ways to innovate and broaden our appeal. So, for example, we're just getting ready to launch Sparked, the skills-based micro-volunteering tool. We're also working with VolunteerMatch on an auto hours tracking function that will automatically track employee hours after they've registered for an event on VolunteerMatch. And we're piloting a volunteer storytelling platform with Microsoft. It showcases internally and externally all the great things employees are doing in their communities. So as you can see, we're driving a lot of positive change and growth at United Health Group. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue. I think what's so interesting about your program is that you so clearly match your engagement program with the structure of your other businesses, with the portfolio. And I think that that's really stood out for us here at VolunteerMatch, watching as your program has improved over the last several years, just kind of seeing how those tweaks to the infrastructure of the program, and also just throughout the year how your team is constantly revisiting strategically where the projects and volunteering and engagement are taking place, and how that relates all back to kind of the broader strategy that you've got. I wanted to next introduce Erin Dietrich. She's at Discovery Communications, and they've also done a lot of work in their program to kind of constantly evolve what they're doing, and certainly have learned a lot from others out there that are also engaging their employees. Erin, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Vicki. I'm excited to be here to talk a little bit about Discovery's programs. So I'll just give everybody a quick overview of who Discovery Communications is. We are the #1 nonfiction media company in the world. We have 130 television networks worldwide. The ones in the U.S. that you're probably most familiar with are Discovery Channel, TLC, Animal Planet, Science Channel, ID, and our new joint ventures, The Hub and the Oprah Winfrey Network, OWN. We reach 1.5 billion subscribers worldwide, and that covers 210 different countries and territories. While we certainly are a large company from a consumer-based perspective, we actually have a fairly small employee number. We have 4,000 employees on 5 different continents, and right now we have about 40 offices that vary in size from our headquarters here in Silver Spring, Maryland, where we have about 1,800 employees, to small offices around the world that have only 1 or 2 folks. Discovery was founded in 1985 by John Hendricks, who's still very active in our day-to-day, with the mission of satisfying curiosity. And we've really taken the idea of satisfying curiosity as the main tenet of our CSR programs. We've extended it a little bit and think of it as satisfying curiosity and making a difference in the lives of people where we live and where we work. We really want to try to give back to the world and the stories and the people who have made the company successful through our 26 years on air. We have put together our CSR programs and really redefined them in the past couple years, and we've branded them Discovery Impact. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see the way that the Discovery Impact programs have rolled out to 3 distinct employee volunteerism programs. Within Discovery Impact, we also have charitable giving and disaster relief, cause marketing partnerships with all of our businesses and brands, and also all the work that our executives do on boards. But the core of what we're going to talk about today is really our employee volunteerism programs, which, as I mentioned, we launched in 2010. We have 3 distinctive programs. The first is Discover Your Impact Day, which is our global day of volunteerism. It happens every year in June, right around our anniversary. This year it's going to be June 15th. And we've had great success getting our employees engaged in this program. We've had a consistent participation rate over the 2 years we've run it of 75% of global employees, about 3,000 people. We have people out on all 5 continents and over 140 different projects that really all focus on 3 different categories, which are land, water, and people. We feel like those are really key to Discovery's DNA. We wanted those to be the focus of this program when we launched it. It's been greatly taken to by our employees and our executives, and you're frequently in meetings where people say, we need something like Impact Day where we all get together. So we saw that as a big win and took that as a sign that we were ready to launch our second program, which we did just a few months after that first one. This is the program that we'll actually talk about in today's case study, so I'll just give you a very small taste of the overview. This is called Discovery Impact Creating Change, and it's a 12-hour pro bono marathon that our creative employees do. We have 200 employees here in headquarters who participate, and we really wanted to find a way to leverage the skills and talents of what we see as one of our most valuable assets, our outstanding, best-in-class creative employees, and use their skills for local charities, which we saw were really in need of some of these creative resources. Our third program is Discovery Impact Rebuilding Alabama. We call this the rebuilding category. This is our first on-the-ground disaster relief program, which we did last September, and we're absolutely, due to the success of it, looking at what rebuilding 2.0 looks like. Just like Vicky said, we're always assessing, reevaluating, and thinking about the ways to evolve each of these programs. We took 125 employees representing all of our U.S. offices, along with about 5 or 6 different talents from different networks down to the Birmingham, Alabama area, which, as you'll remember, was hit by some just truly devastating tornadoes last spring. And we worked with Habitat for Humanity to rebuild 5 different homes and shine a spotlight on a community a few months after the spotlight had kind of turned off. We really brought a lot of awareness back to that community, and their rebuilding effort has kind of redoubled since we've been there, which we're really proud of. So together, these 3 programs, as I said, really do allow us to harness that power that our employees have and give back to the world, just like our original mission. So on the next slide, we'll get into talking about Discovery Impact Creating Change, which is going to be the focus of this case study. So this is our pro bono initiative. We launched it in 2010. It was the first time the company had ever really taken a foray into pro bono. And we wanted to do it in a unique way that was reflective of Discovery's culture. We have very, very driven employees who work very hard, as I'm sure so many of you do. And we knew that they would not be able to take on a pro bono project where they worked consistently over the course of a few months. We knew we needed to do a deep dive in a short amount of time. So we looked around and researched other models and came to the marathon model as something that we thought would be successful. And it's really worked so well for us. We opened an application period for both nonprofits and employees. Nonprofits apply with what types of creative work they want. Employees apply to be a part of the program. And we played the ultimate matchmaker. We picked the projects that we think would work in 12 hours and would really resonate with our company and our brands and our employees. And we pick and choose employees and put them on teams to ensure that we can provide these services to the nonprofits. The employees work from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. and then the next day is the payoff. It's the big reveal, and all the charities get to see the work that was created for them. And on the slide here, you can see 2 different ads that were created for 2 charities in our first year, for the Anacostia Watershed Society and for the Manna Food Center, which is a local shelter here in our county. We've determined that there's about $360,000 of in-kind value just in our employees' time alone, let alone the projects that they're creating that come out of this program. And the secondary component is that we have a conference that happens during the 12-hour marathon. The conference is more like 6 hours. And we invite every charity who applied to the program to the conference. We really try to find those key issues that we saw time and time again in the applications and focus in and create different sessions around those issues where the charities will get to speak with each other as well as our executives. From this program, we have just been overwhelmed by the renewed sense of creativity and spirit that our employees see. They're so passionate about Discovery to start with, but after this program, we just get an outpouring of emails from employees saying that they went back to their desk the next day with completely fresh eyes. And we always say that sometimes when you have writer's block, you need to actually write something completely different than what you're working on. And for us, creating change is almost like a way to break creative writer's block and get everybody re-energized about their work. So if you go to the next slide, I wanted to talk a bit about how we measure success and how we create change here at Discovery. Change is truly part of Discovery's corporate culture. In the television industry, you are always looking for ways to improve upon what you've done. You can never rest on your laurels. And and you're always looking for ways to evolve and innovate, and we certainly use that same filter when we look at our CSR programs. We think our CSR programs should be treated just like any other program that the business is running. And so we never are sitting back and saying, that was great, let's just do it again next year. We're always looking for ways to change it and make it better. Every company has different ways that they measure metrics and what's important to them. And for Discovery, it's really about qualitative metrics, and perhaps that's because we're in the business of storytelling, but we really look to see through surveys and through feedback sessions what works for people and what doesn't. And that is what we then show our executives, talk about publicly, versus metrics, which are not numerical metrics, which are not as much the focus for us. We absolutely look at those headline metrics, like the number of employees who have participated, the number of charities, the value of our time, but we really are looking at that qualitative information just as much. We actually use SurveyMonkey, which is an easy tool. It's a free tool that I recommend to other folks as well, to do our own surveys so that we can be quick and get those surveys at the second our programs end. We survey all of our participants, from the employees to our executives to people who just participated in the conference to the nonprofits who actually had the full experience of the marathon. And we try to ask not just easy questions and not just questions that will get us a great approval rating, but the hard questions. I really enjoy hearing negative feedback from people because for me that provides an easy opportunity to make something better. And we look in those surveys to give people opportunities to really give their feedback. Sure, I liked it, but it would have been even better if you had done X, Y, or Z. And we want to hear that from our employees as well as from our participating charities. We also have a term, which I'm sure other companies use, called lessons learned. And we do a lessons learned meeting sometimes before an initiative's even started. Sometimes we'll do it right after the application process so that we can really write down all those things that are fresh in our minds that we wish we improved upon for the next year. And we compile all those lessons learned documents into our evaluation of the program so that we can refer back to it and really identify things that we could do to make the program better. We like to say at Discovery that everything is always thought of as version 1.0. And sometimes before the initiative even happens, we're saying, oh gosh, in 2.0, we've got to do X or we've got to do Y. And so I think that really gives you a picture of how the corporate culture is here at Discovery. We're always trying to generate excitement for the next version. And so we are looking to create evaluations from that feedback and communicate all of that to our employees. We go back to our employees and say, based on what you told us, we're changing the program in the following ways. And we hope that you'll join us and tell us how you like it this time and what you would like to change again. So that helps us a lot. On the next slide, we'll see how this kind of overarching change model has affected creating change specifically between the 2 years. We identified 4 areas that we wanted to improve upon, and I'll give 1 second to Casey so she can flip the slide. There we go. So after our evaluations, we really thought there were 4 key areas, and these were things that we saw positive feedback around and negative feedback around, and we personally felt like we could do them better. So the first one was the application for the nonprofits. We really wanted to increase the complexity of it going into the second year. We thought that that would truly give us a better idea of what the charities were looking for. It would help us ensure that we were pairing the right employees with the charities. And we also thought that it might actually create a little bit of a higher barrier for entry to our charity partners, which I often don't say our goal is to decrease numbers, but for this it really was. We had 240 applications the first year, and the second year with the more complex application, we had 150. And we were much happier with that smaller number because we felt like it was 150 truly quality applications where the organizations were ready to receive the help that they asked for. Versus the first time out, some of them were very brief and we couldn't quite understand what the charity was looking for. We felt like we weren't able to help them. The second section was the conference. We expanded from a very brief conference, 2 sessions, a couple hours the first year, to a full-blown day of different types of sessions in hopes to create a much deeper impact, which was something that we heard feedback about. We looked for opportunities to provide one-on-one sessions with discovery executives, roundtable discussions where charities could not only hear from a discovery perspective, but share lessons amongst themselves, because we realized after the first year, we are not the expert on everything that these charitable partners were looking to hear about. Some of the areas of fundraising are things that we do not do on a daily basis, and we didn't want to just leave that piece out. So instead, we looked to some of our long-term nonprofit partners to help host sessions, and we gave the charities opportunities to work with each other and share their learnings. We also changed our employee team structure and created a lot of multidisciplinary teams, which was something we'd seen little hints of during the first year, and people were really excited about that opportunity to work with new people. It gave them a great chance to really figure out how to, work with someone they've never worked with before, and then their bond was so much greater, and it was networking, but it was also having them really feel compelled to be a part of the program again, because it gave them something that they weren't getting through the rest of the year in their work. So we created a lot of multidisciplinary teams this year, and we also mixed up traditional working teams. So in our creative department, we always have a copywriter and a graphic designer who are paired together, and they're kind of a two-man show. So we broke them all up this year and changed them up, and we had so much great success from that. We heard a lot of their managers saying to us afterwards, I never knew that Sue and Bob could work so well together, and now that I've seen how creative they are together, I'm going to find ways to have them work together again. So we see that as a really great benefit for the company outside of giving back to the charities through this program. And then finally, we really wanted to change the number of charities that we selected. We bit off perhaps a little bit more than we could chew the first year. Out of that 240 who applied, we picked 40 partners. And this year, we scaled back a little bit, and out of the 150 who applied, we picked 24. And what we did, we have the same number of employee volunteers, 200, but it allowed us to create these deeper dives. So, in year one, we might have just given somebody banner ads, but in year two, we paired a digital strategy team with that creative team and gave them the banner ads, as well as a marketing digital strategy of how they could roll these banner ads out, what would be the best places for them to put them up in order to get the highest return. So we felt like these super teams that combined lots of different components of the business, from marketing to an executive, to communications, to a creative group, to events, were really key, and they were incredibly successful, and we're absolutely looking to continue that model in 2012. If you go to the next slide, I'll just summarize by talking a little bit about what's next for us, because going back to Vicky's mantra, assess, adapt, evolve, repeat, and we absolutely live by that. So we have been doing a lot of all of those things and are eagerly looking forward to an expansion of this program into our London office, which is slated to happen a little over 5 weeks from today. And we have been really assessing the past two programs and sending those learnings to our partners in the London office to help them get this program off the ground and to adapt this program to fit that office, because certainly, one size does not fit all of these types of programs, and it's really important to remember that. We're also looking at all of the surveys that we got back this year and still digging through those evaluations and seeing what the key takeaways are so that we can ensure that we add those to the program. And we're looking, for version 3.0. It's an ongoing joke sometimes around here, like how many versions are we going to end up having? But we're looking to figure out what types of pro bono work that we did really stuck and resonated with the charities, which pieces had to be tweaked, and what we aren't currently offering that could be successful. And that allows us to think about ways to apply this framework, which now we feel like is a little bit more tried and true after 2 years, to other departments. So, is there a way to take the Creating Change model but do it with some of our non-traditional creative departments like a legal team or an HR team, so that we can really continue to provide this type of experience to all of our employees regardless of where they sit in the company, and also to fulfill more needs for our charitable partners. So that's it from me, Vicki.
Great, thanks so much, Erin. And I love the way that you all are, even in the midst of planning your 1.0 or 2.0, already making a list for the next version, which I know often in conversations with others, it's easy to say, well, we're not going to get to that this year, instead of changing that frame of mind and saying, yes, that's a great idea great idea, let's do it next year. So I think that that's something really great for the folks on the call to sort of think through just the conversations they're having about their programs, both the infrastructure, which I think Sue at United Health gave some really great examples about how their core infrastructure fits correctly and aligns well with the rest of their business, and then also for sort of just project-based initiatives where you constantly want to be evolving those programs. So just a quick recap about sort of some of the best practices. First, really making sure that your program is a good fit for your company and your corporate culture. There's not going to be one program that makes sense for everyone on the call or every company out there. So, if you think back to that change model, it's flexible and allows you to really place the various components of your program where they truly do sit in your company, and allows you to focus in on each of them so that you can move them up or down or scale them up or back as necessary. Second, communications. As you're changing these programs and evolving them, you want to make sure that your commitments are visible and that your stakeholders and your employees understand what's new and what's changed, so that they see that the program is continuing to be fresh and interesting, and they're interested in getting involved. Third, measure, 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 and adjust. There were two great examples. Sue at United Health, they do some amazing metrics, always looking back at sort of the quantitative as well as the qualitative data that they're collecting with their program. And Erin at Discovery mentions too that for some of their programs, they're really looking for that qualitative data so they can dig in to see what people are recommending they improve, not just their employees, but their nonprofit partners that they're working with, and they're looking for those kind of negative comments so that they can improve things for the following year. Fourth, consider each of your program components. I mentioned that already. So, don't feel like your entire program needs to move as one huge blob up and down the spectrum, but there are different components that may make sense to focus on in 2012. I know a lot of you in the poll chose the specific ones that you'd be working on. So, take that back with you today and really focus on that component and work to expand it or adapt it as necessary, and then move on to the next component. And then finally, continue to be thinking about what comes next, so that's that version 2.0 and beyond. And of course, we can't forget to assess, adapt, evolve, and repeat. Then I think that there's been some great questions come in, so we'll turn it over to Casey so she can ask them.
Yes, thank you all so much, Vicki, Sue, and Erin, for sharing all this great information with all of us. I do have a lot of questions coming in, so we're going to get to as many of those as we can. But if we don't get to your question today, hopefully we can follow up after the live session so that we can help you with those. First, to start off, I'm going to direct this one first towards Vicki, and then maybe Sue and Erin can chime in with any other suggestions they have. I've had a couple of questions come through that relate to each other. It's questions about having a new program, and possibly also having an organization that might be a little bit change averse. So the question is kind of twofold. So when we're rolling out these programs for the first time, what kind of challenges did you face? And maybe this is something that Vicki can also draw from her other experience too. But also, what are the best ways to kind of navigate any type of resistance that comes with new programs? So Vicki, can you address that one first, and maybe Sue and Erin can chime in with any other advice?
Sure. I certainly feel for you, the questions that you're asking. It's difficult when you've got a new program and you're in the midst of launching and sort of figuring out those complexities that we talked about for an employee engagement program, because often you're working with cross-functional groups that other initiatives don't need to worry about. So I think key is first kind of finding those key players that can help you navigate through your internal organization and your corporate culture, so that you can spend your time wisely and efficiently to sort of make the change that you're looking to make. And then the other thing is, don't feel like you need to be pushing a huge amount of change through all at once. You know, you really can kind of break things down into those different components, focus in on what's most important to you at first, and sort of build that buy-in and sort of prove that it's necessary and that it's working for your employees. So, you know, I would sort of just focus in on kind of the little pieces and constantly tweaking your program as you go, instead of feeling like it's this daunting task where you have to get from having no program to winning awards and having the best program out there immediately.
Great, thanks, Vicki. Sue or Erin, do you have anything to add about how getting your program started and being met with resistance?
Yeah, this is Sue. I mean, I guess what we've done is when we're trying to introduce something new is oftentimes we'll start it as a pilot with a limited group of employees and limited geographic areas so that we can learn about it, and then we can take our learnings and build them out into something more permanent. We have feedback from participants to justify continuing to go forward. We kind of did that last summer with the Sparked program. We piloted it with a group of individuals. And then resistance-wise, I guess oftentimes we might try to align ourselves with an executive champion, find an executive in the organization that feels strongly in support of what you're trying to do, and ask that person if they will be vocal and be a champion for you to help move it forward.
Great.
And then a lot of it is just the general culture, and to what extent your culture is change-oriented. Ours is a pretty strong change-oriented culture, but I know I've worked in organizations in the past where they aren't so much that way.
I'll just piggyback off of what Sue said really quickly to say at Discovery we've used the executive champion model to great success, especially with our Global Day of Volunteerism. When we launched that in 2010, it was the first time we were trying to rally everybody around doing one thing. And, you know, while there wasn't necessarily resistance, there were definitely a few people saying, well, do we really have to do this, or can't we just do it on our own time? And getting everybody together at once was critical to us for the success of the program. And so we leveraged whoever, you know, the most senior executive was in every office globally and got them to become our champions and to actually sign on as an official champion of their project. We, you know, would list their name with the project on VolunteerMatch so that as the employees went to sign on, they saw, oh, this is coming, you know, from above as much as it's coming from below. We need to, this is something that is approved of and that I should be participating in because my whole team is participating in. And then in terms of the second part of the question, I would just say sometimes what I find is really helpful is when you do make those small changes and you get feedback from employees, we kind of try to compile all the feedback that we get. Just, you know, even all the emails that different people who work on the team have received in the week following the event. We put that all together, you know, taking out names to make it more anonymous. And then we share that with our executives so that they can really see the feedback to the change and can understand the impact that it's making on the employees. And that's been a pretty successful strategy for us.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for that great advice. You know, really, from what it sounds like, and kind of in summary, is really kind of taking your program not all at once, but really piecing it apart and figuring out where you can kind of implement change easily, and then help build that momentum, gather feedback, and make sure that there's sort of that full top-down and bottom-up kind of buy-in from the organization. So thank you all very much. We have another few questions that are coming together and are very related to each other. So this might be another one that I ask all of you to chime in on if you can. It's regarding, you know, you've built a great program, you have all the assessment, all the metrics in place of how to measure it. How do you get your employees motivated to get out and take part in your program? You know, this is sort of, you know, you can build it, but will they come? So, you know, we also have some related questions about, you know, for Erin and Sue in particular, is what incentives are you offering them to get engaged in these programs? So if each of you could kind of just take a moment and maybe reply to the fact of how do you motivate the employees to actually come out and participate?
I can start. This is Sue. I think one of our biggest motivators is the fact that we built this. We don't have a like you get 8 hours of paid volunteer time away from work a year, but what we do have is a team building policy that says that when a manager and his or her direct reports go out into the community to volunteer, it's considered team building because they are developing team communications and other skills, and so those hours that they spent are considered regular paid hours. So we have some groups that go, well, they go out pretty often, you know, once a month, more than once a month. I mean, they use it to the extent that they feel that they need to, but it's a huge, huge motivator. And then, you know, things like dollars for doers, they're there. You know, a lot of employees can't really get to 30 hours a year for our Dollars for Doers program, so we have an incentive program that we created. It's a quarterly drawing where once a quarter, VolunteerMatch selects for us employees at random, and then these employees get a $100 check to their charity versus the $200 check that goes to Dollars for Doers users. But it's all they have to do is log 1 hour during a quarter in order to be eligible for that. So so it goes a long way toward motivating people. But those are just a couple examples.
At Discovery, we actually, you know, both of the programs that I talked about are paid time off if you're participating in the official program. And we have found that we don't need to motivate our employees that much. They're really self-motivated and extremely excited to have the opportunity that the company is providing to them. But the first time out of the gate, you know, there's definitely a little bit of, you know, people not being 100% sure what the program is. Is it going to be fun? Am I going to enjoy it? And so we do a lot of road shows to try to explain to people what the program is going to be. We also always make a really cool T-shirt that becomes super coveted. And so if you participate, you get the T-shirt. And people get very excited about getting the T-shirt. So it's a nice little incentive for participation. And for the first year of Impact Day, we actually, in headquarters and some of our other bigger offices, had some little informal sign-up parties. So we would, you know, have breakfast, and people could come down and grab a bite to eat and grab a cup of coffee and talk to one of our planners about the different opportunities, and then sign up right there on a computer kiosk for their project. And I know in some of the other international offices, they did similar things, you know, a little mixer at the end of the day to talk to the employees about what the experience was and get them to sign up in person. So those are the types of things that have worked here at Discovery.
And this is Vicki. I would just add one other thing is, you know, ask your employees what will motivate them and listen to the feedback that they're giving after the surveys of your events, or just what they're saying to one another about your program, because they're going to be your best ally in making sure that things are successful and that they're really engaged in the work that you're planning for them.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. We're just about out of time today, so if we didn't get to your questions, we're very sorry we didn't get to them live, but we should follow up with you. If anybody is interested to learn more about building a flexible and sustainable program, after the call, coming around via email tomorrow, you'll receive a copy of our just released guide about how to build a volunteer program change model and use it to adapt. So you'll all receive that tomorrow after the session. Second, to stay up to date on kind of what's happening in the world of CSR, what's happening in the world of employee volunteerism, definitely check out our blog, volunteeringthescsr.org. And I'd like to just point out, VolunteerMatch had the pleasure of taking part in the Discovery Communications Creating Change program this year, and we got a total blog redesign. So if you haven't been in a few weeks, definitely go and check it out. That's also a great way to stay up to date on the sessions that are coming up next. And also follow us on Twitter at VM_solutions for kind of all news throughout the day related to this. And again, thank you to Sue Austin and Aaron Dietrich for joining us today. And thank you to everyone in the audience for listening in. We really appreciate your time, and we hope to see you next time on the call. Have a great day.